Fall 1959, Hocking Hills, Ohio. 6 guardsmen sent to check old tunnels under Old Man's Cave. Easy job, quiet woods. Then the ground starts to hum. Birds blast out of the trees. The radio spits our own voices back, and a stranger whispers, "Turn back." Next thing, the rock splits open, and in the fog above the ridge, something tall is watching. That's when we knew we weren't alone out there. So before we continue, please make sure to like and subscribe to support the channel, and comment down below where you're watching from. Thanks. I was a sergeant out of the Ohio Guard, name's Thomas Ward. Early 30s then. Korean War behind me. My knees still knew hills, my back still hated rucks. It was early fall of 1959. Cold War on the radio. Corn tall back home. Forest damp down south. They sent 6 of us to Hocking Hills. Sandstone gorges, old trails, fog that laid low like a drunk. We were a small detachment from the 241st Engineer Battalion, attached to a Corps of Engineers survey crew. On paper, we were taking notes for some communications experiment. Rumor said it was about how sound crawls through rock. I didn't ask. I'd learned the less you ask, the more you sleep. We set up camp near Old Man's Cave. Big overhang, water whispering, the smell of wet leaves and old fire rings. We had canvas tents and a stack of cold rations. M1s cleaned and stacked in the sand racks I made from 2 stakes and a sapling. Radio was the reliable kind, heavy, boxy, hated hills. PBT. Langley carried it like a dog he didn't know yet. The kid was brave but green. I thought everything was going to be a story to write home. He would lean on the handset like it might whisper back. Corporal Reeves was my hard case. Barrel chest, scar on his jaw from a bar fight back when beer cost a nickel. Skeptical about everything, including me. He called me top, even though I wasn't. He did it to be a pain. He did it with a grin, so I let him. Specialist Carter came down from the Corps, geologist. Tall, quiet, glasses that fogged when he breathed with his mouth open, which was always. He liked rocks the way some men like dogs. He had notebooks full of little diagrams of layers and bedding planes and words like fluvial and joint set. I told him to keep it simple. He tried. PBT. Griggs was a father of 2. Nervous like a man with reasons to live. Hands are always busy. He'd smoke only when everyone else slept. He kept a picture of his kids in his hat liner and touched it when he thought no one was looking. Let heat. Harlow was our butter bar. Clean boots, clean smile. Came out of some office with a handshake and a car. He said the experiment was above our pay grade. He said the tunnels were New Deal leftovers from the Civilian Conservation Corps. He wanted us to log weather, sounds, terrain. He was the kind who said, "Jot that down," and never lifted a pencil. We set the routine. Daylight, we humped along trails and notches, checked old CCC tunnel mouths, measured air temps, marked compass headings, paced distances. I made them talk out loud while they paced. Helps with memory. At night, we cooked tins over a small blue fire that didn't make smoke, changed socks, oiled rifles. The M1s looked good in this country. Steel and walnut. Parts that say, "Trust me." The radio hissed and muttered. You could taste iron in the fog when it came. Hocking Hills is all soft rock, sandstone cut by water into sheets and bowls. Old Man's Cave sits like a half-open mouth. Sound bounces in dumb ways. The first night, I tested it, stood under the overhang and said my name. It came back wrong, like I'd said it from a different spot. Same voice, not quite same me. I told myself it was the shape of the stone. The Corps had a word for it. They always do. We stacked our gear by the tents. Reeves laid out a trip line of empty canteens and cord. Griggs joked about bears. I said bears don't like clanking metal and men who smell like army soap. He still slept with his rifle muzzle down, as trained but too close to his cheek, as fathers do. Carter showed us maps with tunnels sketched in pencil. Some were sealed off in the 30s. Some were just rumors. He talked about infrasound equipment like it was a pet. New thing that made low noise you don't hear but rocks do. He said sandstone keeps memories. He meant it holds vibrations. I told him rocks don't care. He smiled like he knew better. We felt steady, calm. The work was dull, which is the kind you live through. We were 6 men in a big state forest. Nothing supernatural. Just wet boots and cold cans and a radio that wouldn't shut up. After chow, I stood again under the overhang. Said nothing. The air was damp and still, and my spit tasted like penny metal. I listened. Our own voices echoed down the gorge at us from somewhere they hadn't been. Second day, late afternoon, the Corps boys got their toy out. Looked like a cranky generator mated with a music box. Carter called it the infrasound unit. He rolled his eyes when Reeves called it the humming brick. We hauled it near a low tunnel mouth, stamped concrete around it, a plate set in stone that said CCC 1934. The plate had rust freckles like old blood. Carter tuned dials. Langley noted wind speed. No wind. Griggs wrote humidity, damp enough to soak bread through the can. Harlow told me to add a line about visibility. Fog pockets loitering in the cuts, like they paid rent. Somewhere up above, a hawk squealed once, then shut it. When Carter brought the hum up, a slow belly-sick bass, the trees did a strange thing. Birds came out like buckshot. Sparrows, maybe starlings, a whole damn sheet of them exploding out of the canopy. They went the wrong way. Not up and out, sideways and down, like they lost every compass at once. Reeves laughed because men laugh when things feel off. I didn't laugh. We stood quiet. The hum made your teeth itch. The radio picked up a low throb, not words, just something like a heartbeat at the edge of hearing. Carter smiled and wrote numbers. Said something about signal return. He tapped a pencil on the map and pointed under the drawn tunnel line. Echoes not from this cavity, he said. Something deeper, hollow below the hollow. Sinkhole, I said. He shook his head. Bedrock's weird here. Sandstone over shale. The low stuff moves water, the high stuff remembers. He wrote resonant memory in his notes. I told him fine, but memories don't cave in your chest. He didn't answer. Dusk came like a wet blanket. We shut the box down. The air felt wrung out. We strung camp tight. Reeves checked the ridgeline with glass. He said nothing moved. I didn't like that either. You learn to love the little noises. Crickets, wind, squirrels being idiots. But that night, the forest felt like a held breath. No wind, no bugs. Even the waterfall under Old Man's lip sounded tired. We ate cold rations and made jokes about beans. I sent Langley to try a radio check. He idled the handset by his ear and frowned. He said he heard tapping under static, soft, rhythmic. He said it sounded like Morse but wrong. Letters that weren't letters, like the space between letters. He wrote them anyway the way radio men do, left to right, little lines and dots. Later we would read it and see it meant nothing. Later we would swear it did. Reeves went to dump slop and came back with a coil of rusted cable over his shoulder. He found it near a sealed mouth, half buried in leaf rot. He said folks had done work here they didn't put on maps. Old winch parts, a cracked lantern glass, pig head snapped off the handle. The seal at the tunnel looked poured and pebbled. Fresh ones, now holed with frost scars. CCC did it, the stamp said. Government makes holes. Government fills them. The forest eats both. The night went colder. Fog pooled in the gorge like milk. We took watches. I walked the line alone and smelled wet iron and earth like a root cellar. Tap, 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 tap. From the direction of the sealed mouth, not loud, not close, but persistent. Langley slid out of his bag and crouched, eyes wide. He said again it was like code but meaner, like someone who knew code but had rocks in his mouth. Before I turned in, the radio coughed. One word, thin as a breath, between static sheets. A man's voice like he was standing underwater. Turn back before it opens. Then just hiss. Langley blinked at me. I told him it was interference. Another unit testing. Mountains do that to signals. He nodded because I wore stripes and his face was too young to know better. We slept light. The overhang dripped. The echo from the gorge didn't give us our jokes back. It sent them wrong, late, like a neighbor repeating what you said but with a crook in it. Morning. We geared up to check yesterday's readings at the lower cave. Old Man's Cave has side holes you don't see until you're in the shadow. Then they sit there like black teeth. We went in with lamps and simple masks because Carter said there can be bad air pockets. He spoke like the cave was a lung that might share a cough. Inside is all cool and dust and drip. Our boots left clear prints. Then we saw the other prints, fresh in the dust, soft-edged, like someone had walked through minutes before and the dust hadn't had time to settle. Not boot prints. Bare feet, narrow, heel and arch and 5 toes. Adult size. The hair on my arms stood up. We moved slow. M1's low but ready. Reeves hummed a dirty tune under his breath. Griggs breathed through his mouth and it whistled. Langley stayed near me with the radio, like a kid near a father's coattail when the thunder starts. We felt the pressure change. Ears popped like on a bad flight. The hair in your sinuses prickled. The radio hiss turned clear and then turned cruel. It was us, yesterday's check-in. Word for word. My voice, tinny, tired, asking Carter for a reading. Carter's voice answering numbers, time stamps in the same order. I looked at Langley. He tapped the set like a TV that needs a smack. It kept talking like we were trapped in a loop someone was spooling out for us. Deeper in, something glowed. Not bright. Like the memory of a lantern. Yellow, warm, reflected off damp rock in a way that made your eyes chase it. Carter said it could be minerals. Light does dumb things in caves. He shouted hello, and his voice went nowhere and then came back like it didn't want to. The glow moved toward us, like a man walking slow with a light held out in front. Then it went out. No footsteps. No wind of someone passing. Just gone. Then a shape right there, shape of a man where the light had been. He was pale and powdery like talc, overalls and a shirt like the ones in old photos. He had a cap, the little cloth kind, worn for long days. He looked like he was about to ask for a wrench. Then he shook, blurred, ran like wet charcoal in the rain, and was missed. Griggs flinched and fired one round into the wall. The blast knocked dust down like old flour. I yelled, "Cease." The echo came back late. Much too late. It rolled slow, like big stones in a tin. It shouldn't have. Physics says one thing. The cave said another. We looked at each other and didn't say ghost. You don't say that in the guard. You say bad light. You say fatigue. You say bad air. We got out to daylight without tripping over each other. The sky was white like bone. I told him it was probably reflection in nerves. Reeves smirked, which for him meant he believed me less than usual. Carter scribbled faster than a court reporter. Langley checked the radio. It still carried a low pulse. It sounded like what you hear in your own head when you lie down hard on your ear. Heartbeat, but not ours. Evening draped itself over the gorge. The fog came earlier, heavier. It flowed in like a tide. Reeves said the ridge line had gone soft like a hand smearing charcoal. I told him to cut the poetry and check the perimeter. He did with a smile. He liked pushing. We had stowed the humming brick. No one admitted touching it, but at full dark it growled to life by itself. A low floor-scraping note that put a nail in the back of my skull. The dials ticked. The needle trembled. Carter ran to kill it, popped the casing, pulled the plug. The hum got louder. The speaker went to static and then to scream, and then something inside blew. Little shower of sparks like a busted Christmas tree. After that, the ground under us moved. Not a quake the way I'd felt in Korea when artillery walked in. This was slower. Like something underneath took a long lungful. The radio lit with chatter that wasn't ours. Men calling. Names from another century. Hold the brace. Get the jack. She's going. Voices layered on voices, tired and doomed. No call signs. No unit. Just people. Carter stood still like a deer. He said soft, CCC. The tapping came again, hard now, metal on rock. Distant. Then closer. Then both. Fog thickened and carried smell. Wet iron, like a bucket that sat a season in water. Fur, like a wet dog, just bigger. It got in the mouth and clung to your tongue. Reeves was up on the lip, then slid down quick and quiet. He said he had movement along the ridge to our west. Something big stepped between two pines and took 3 strides where a man would take 6. He said he only saw silhouette and wish he hadn't. We checked prints near the camp at first light the next morning and found some that didn't make sense. Heel to toe like a man, no claw, but each step was far apart. 6 feet by Griggs's pace count. Depth said heavy. Reeves said bear. I said bears don't step like parade soldiers. I didn't say what I thought. That night the forest tried to talk like us. Langley stiffened and pointed with the handset. From the edge of camp came my voice, me, but not, saying "Ward" on me in the low way I do in ambush drills. Reeves turned and answered before he thought. Then he went still and his face went tight. The repeat came again from another angle. Griggs this time, then Harlow. The fog carried the sounds between the trees there and then over there. The calls were close enough to make you answer and wrong enough to make you regret it. I ordered noise discipline, set sectors. Told them no one leaves the circle without my say. Harlow picked up the radio and tried higher. Higher answered for a second, a voice that sounded like it came through 2 miles of wet rope. Do not approach. Seal all lower access points. Then the line died hard. Not even hiss. A blackout. I looked at Carter. He was already staring at the sealed mouths on his map. That message didn't sound like a survey anymore. It sounded like a lid. Late night. Fog so thick the lantern light made a little personal bubble and nothing past it. I made the rounds. Griggs had the watch. He had that look men wear when they are chewing the inside of their cheek to keep from crying. I opened my mouth to say something nice about his kids and then the air went empty. Silence does have weight. You feel it when a sound bigger than you has been pulled away. I closed my mouth. In the circle of his lantern there was his rifle. M1, barrel driven down in the mud so hard it stood upright like a stick planted there. The sling twitched a little from the last push. No boots, no Griggs, just a deep scuff where something dragged or spun. We called soft. We waited long. No shot, no voice. I walked the perimeter with Reeves and tasted copper. He wanted to chase. I said no. He gave me that look like he wanted to punch me and hug me. We waited till light because we are not heroes. We are men who learn to count to 10 and live. The morning sound rolled back into the gorge, pounding, steady, like a crew with sledges down in the earth. Then a new sound laid over it. A long, low roar you didn't hear with ears. You felt it in your teeth, your eyes, the tender meat around your heart. Leaves shook on branches with no wind. Langley gagged and didn't puke only because he wanted to look tough. I didn't feel tough. I felt small. At dawn on the 3rd day, we found a slit in the ground near our site where the trail veers east. A fresh break. Not big. Big enough. A fissure opened where there was none yesterday. The edges were clean, like cake cut with a new knife. Carter said the roof of a lower tunnel had collapsed. He sounded like awe and fear had a kid. We rigged a line around a maple and went down one at a time. The air got old fast, dry and then wet without moving. We found what we always find when the earth decides she is tired of being held up by beams. Jackets, cloth faded to the color of old teeth, a sleeve still around a bone, a cap under a plank, a shovel blade that had been bitten through by rust. CCC uniforms, the kind with small brass buttons. A lunch pail folded under a rock like a tin wallet. Some men died working for the government in the forest, and no one told their wives how they looked. We didn't touch anything. We stood there with lamps and let their mistake breathe on us. The infrasound recorder we left near the site chirped and clicked, and then it was on. No one touched it. No power line. It said, in that same underwater man voice from the first night, we woke it. The ground trembled right after like an answer. A fine rattle climbed the lamp handles. Dust hissed off the ceiling in a thin rain. We crawled out of the slit like slow worms. I came last, shoulders scraping, and when I pulled up and took in air, the fog was standing 10 yards off like a wall. In it, across the ravine, a shape. I have seen bears at distance, and men up close, and gorillas in a magazine. This was none of those and all of them. Upright, wide like a door you can't get closed. Fur matted in gray-brown, shoulders like a man who lifts wood all day or was born already lifting. It watched. It did not step toward us. It made a sound in its chest like a muted engine. A low growl that made my bones do a little dance. My throat tightened like I was about to cry. I fired 2 warning shots left of it. Chips came off the rock. It flinched. It didn't run. It stared. Then it made a longer sound, lower until my eyes watered. Then it turned and slid back into the panes of fog like a fish in silt. We stood there with rifles we trusted and a problem we did not. Carter said the thing below and the thing above were tied. The underground voices. The hum. The fissure. The big one on the ridge. He didn't have to say how. I felt it like a story you know without having read it. We tried radio. Nothing. When a burst came, it was the tapping again, but now the rhythm had changed. It matched the hum rate from the brick. Whatever we fed the ground, it fed back, but not nice. I took a slow breath, gave orders. We would move north by trail to Ash Cave, bigger mouth, cleaner exit. We would not chase. We would not go deeper. We would get to a place where a truck could get to us if anything, with rubber tires still wanted to come. We packed what we could in 10 minutes. We left the humming brick dead on its guts. I placed a poncho over the slit, weighed it with rocks like that would matter to the earth. I said sorry out loud without meaning to. Reeves heard and didn't smile. We moved. 5 now. Packs tight, rifles tight. Fog drew in and paced us. Sometimes behind. Sometimes above like a low ceiling. Sometimes it came up the ravine like the world was boiling. The trails here cut between cliffs and drop-offs. Sandstone sweats when the air is like this. The ground shifted underfoot in a slippery way. The vibration started up again. Not the ground breathing, more like a subwoofer under the crust. A long pulse, then a pause, then 2. The timing built on itself. Like someone underground was counting and getting excited. Shadows in the trees moved like men who do not want to be seen and are very good at it. Once every 30 minutes, you could swear you saw a warm lantern light under the leaf mat. Not on it. Under. A yellow smudge like a glowworm inside the skin of the world. Carter saw it and wrote nothing. He had stopped writing. Griggs was not there to break. Instead, the break flitted from man to man. Harlow had it bad. He started talking about the press back in Columbus and how they would spin this if anyone ever knew. He said to adjust our notes now while we still could. I told him to shut it. He did, and then he cried without sound for 100 yards. A tree went down behind us with no wind. You can tell the difference. A wind tree goes over talking. This one went with a rip at the base and a chunk as the roots came up like a hand. Dirt clods rolled past our boots. We pivoted, rifles out. No one in the notch. No sign of a saw. The roots looked torn, not cut. Strands of long white root meat hung and dripped like spaghetti left in the sink. The smell was bad. Rot and wet fur again. On the ridge to the west, the big shape came back between 2 white oaks. Only a flash. It limped now. The fur on its left side had a black slick patch like something burned it. It looked not angry. Spooked. A deep groan came from the ground right then, the kind a mind makes when it's thinking of killing you. The big one jerked like it had been slapped, then vanished. Predators don't run from other predators. They run from something else. We kept on. Night found us halfway to Ash. Our lamps made little islands. The tapping settled into a pattern behind us and ahead. Sometimes the radio picked it up. Sometimes the earth carried it. A voice guttered through, old and used up. You open the hollow. We can't close it. It said it again and again until the words felt like steps. I had the men sit and drink. We sucked water off our bandanas because our lips felt like splinters. I told them the plan one more time. Reeves sat with elbows on knees, looking at nothing. Langley tried to make the radio do a thing no radio does. Harlow stared at the map like the lines would change if he glared enough. Carter played with a rock like it might answer if he rubbed the corners off. We moved when the night got thin and the fog went from lead to tin. Ash Cave is a half-bowl big enough to hide a town. We came up on it at dawn, the light ugly and gray. No birds, no drizzle. The falls at the back dribbled like someone who gave up. Mist spun slow in the bowl like a lazy tornado with no center. At the lip we saw tracks. Our missing man's boots, at least a few of them. And the big prints, toe to heel like a human scaled wrong. They crossed and recrossed like two drunks. My stomach fell down a hole that wasn't there. Inside the overhang, a helmet sat by itself near a shallow pool. The name tape had given up years ago. The liner was cracked like an eggshell. Around the pool, the sand twitched, not with bugs, with a frequency you only see in labs. The water surface trembled without wind, making rings that did not move outward. They just held like a coin spinning and never falling. The sound rose from a low thing to a thing you feel in the guts. Lights dimmed. Batteries don't care about ghosts. Ours did. Our flashlight beams went sick and yellow and then struggled. The cave darkened like a storm cloud, put its weight on the ceiling. Figures came out from the back, where the waterfall's trickle cut a groove through dark. Not dramatic, they were just there then. Men in overalls and caps and shirts buttoned to the top because it was a different time. Faces pale, not like dead, pale like cave fish. Mouths moved but no sound came. Dozens. They stood ankle deep in the pool and the water didn't ripple. Their eyes were open and tired. The one we saw first in the lower cave stepped forward. He looked at me like men do when they know your job and pity it. He lifted his right arm and pointed up at the ceiling. I looked up because when old workers point, you listen. The ceiling spider cracked. No, not spider, more like a drumhead splitting. A long, dark seam opened like a yawn. Behind it was not empty. It was full, and the full was moving. Wet black flesh in slow waves, mottled with pale plates like bone or quartz. It pulsed. For a second I thought I saw ribs, and then I thought that was dumb, and then the moving said, maybe not. The big one came to the entrance, right there where a man would stand to keep wolves out of a barn. It gave a roar that had teeth. It was the first noise that sounded like a thing with lungs, not like the earth's throat. The roar bounced off the walls, made our lamps flicker. It looked at us and then past us at the ceiling like it hated that more than it hated us. It backed and waved its arms like a man trying to move cattle. It was not attacking, it was herding. Us. Out, I said. I said, out now. Reeves grabbed Harlow's collar and yanked him like a bad dog. Langley stumbled and kissed Stone and came up bloody. I grabbed Carter's sleeve. He pulled away and planted himself, both feet by the little pool. He held his recorder in one hand and put the other flat on the rock. He didn't look at me. He looked at the ceiling. His lips moved. He said, "It's alive. The whole ridge is alive. You can disagree about geology. You can't argue with a man talking to stone like it's God." The seam above us widened with a sound like a wet book torn in half. Sand poured and something heavier clipped my shoulder, hard as a hoof. The figures in the pool turned their heads at once toward the entrance where the big one stood. They did not touch us. They did not get closer. They mouthed the same silent sentence. They were not telling us to stay. The big one gave another roar, and the forest answered with a groan. I felt the first real panic then, the kind that erases training and leaves the animal. I hit Carter hard in the gut with my forearm and he folded enough. Reeves and I each took an arm and dragged. Harlow found his legs. Langley kept the radio clutched to his chest like a Bible. We ran. The big one pivoted and went out before us, left to right, sweeping us with its presence like a broom. I don't know if it saved us. I know it did need us. We got to daylight and the cave mouth coughed a big breath. Sand blasted out and pebbles pinged our helmets. We dove behind a log that had fallen in the last flood. The entrance folded in on itself, slow and mean. The last thing I saw inside was the pool going flat and the pale faces turning to the dark like they were about to punch in for another shift. The roar stopped like someone closed a door. The tapping ceased. The hum went to zero in my bones. The silence came back with that same terrible weight. And then there was just us. 3 on our feet, 2 on knees, 1 on his side. We listened to a nothing that felt like a verdict. We got out. Not all of us. We came in 6. We left 3. Reeves, Langley, me, that's the math I live with. I don't say the other names around their kids. When I write them in my head, my hand cramps. The report said geological collapse. 3 fatalities. The paper said a small tremor maybe. The Corps collected our notebooks and the dead humming brick and even the map that wasn't theirs. They took the tapes. A captain I never saw before handed me a typed statement to read in case anyone asked. It used words like subsidence and unstable strata. It suggested we had ignored best practices we had followed to the letter. I signed because I have signed worse lies. Weeks after, locals told rangers they heard small tremors at night under the falls. They said their dogs wouldn't cross certain bridges. Teenagers parked at the overlook saw red lights under the water sheets at dusk, like flashlights 2 layers deep in rock. Some old boy at a bait store told Reeves that sometimes on fog nights, you can see lights under the trail like someone took a carbide lamp for a walk an arm's length below the clay. Reeves nodded like he was buying worms. He never went back to fish. Radio chatter around the guard armory years later, after I had moved a desk in front of my body and put a tie on it, had a legend in it. A hunter saw a big, hairy man shaped south of the ridge in the 70s, then again in the 80s. Always skirting the edges, always avoiding the biggest rocks. One man swore the thing stood near the edge of a ridge until a small tremor started, and then it walked away quick, like a man leaving a barn when he hears a beam settle wrong. The hunter said the shape never chased, never came close. It watched. That's worse in some ways. In 1997, some hiker following the loop in late fall found a dog tag tangled in roots above the gorge. Dull brass. Letters packed with dirt. He washed it with water from his bottle. It said my name, rank, and unit. Skate TT1. Ward 241st Ng, BN. My tag. I had lost it there and thought I'd swallowed it whole. A ranger mailed it back with a note that said, found near Old Man's. The envelope had no return address. I put the tag in a drawer under a stack of bills. Some nights I'd take it out and press it between my fingers until the edge is cut. They sealed some mouths in the park, the ones tourists might wander into. They posted new signs. They called it conservation. The case went into a folder labeled geological study and stayed there. I was asked to teach a class about cave safety to young guardsmen, and I did. I said always check air. I said never go alone. I did not say the ridge is alive. I had started to sleep when I said that out loud one night in my kitchen, and my wife put a hand on my neck like I was burning up. Most times I don't talk about this. When I do, it's by fires or on porches with beer in old men's hands. I make it sound small on purpose. That keeps it where it belongs. But you asked, and I felt the old weight on my tongue, and maybe it's time someone else carries a corner. Here's what I think, and I don't need you to agree. The CCC put holes in a place that keeps its own time. They woke something below the picture on the map. Not a monster like from a poster. A body, a living crust we stand on without thinking. The low sounds woke it like you wake a sleeping house with your boots. The big one above, the one folks call Bigfoot when they want to laugh later, I don't think it was the villain in this. I think it lives on the edge of the hollow and knows better than to stomp around when the heart below is beating wrong. I think it tried to push us out the way a neighbor bangs on your window when your garage is on fire. I think we were the fools with the first match. Sometimes when a truck idles low on the highway out past my place, the cabinet doors shake and the plates chatter and I'm back under a ceiling that has a seam. Sometimes on wet nights I hear tapping I know is a branch and my feet still move before I decide. When I say my name alone in the bathroom to see if I still know it, the mirror gives it back just fine, but a part of me waits for the gorgeous version. The wrong one. The one from the side. I don't tell ghost stories. I don't collect monster tales. I tell one thing that happened in a state forest to 6 men with simple jobs. It had fog and rock and a voice on the radio that said, "Turn back." We didn't. The rest of the details are just how it smelled and how my hands felt after, and that is for me. You camp out there, keep your fire small. If you hear heavy steps in the mist, don't answer when it calls your name sounding like me. If you see a warm light through the ground, don't follow. And if you stand under old man's lip and call your name and it comes back wrong, go home. The ridge keeps what it wants. We were lucky it didn't want more. So that's the end of our video. If you made it this far, make sure to hit like and subscribe. It really helps the channel and it's free. And if you want more terrifying encounters like this one, check out the other videos on screen right now. Thanks for watching and stay safe out there. See you soon.